You have a period of or a group of the population, a large chunk of the population that already feels like they're in a recession, right? And then
Yeah.
you have another group that has been investing in stocks, for instance, that is like, wow, this is great. All I've seen is since October of 2022, the stock market's gone up and our 401ks and our IRAs are all up. And in fact, if you look at consumer confidence and you divide it up in between, like, the wealthy versus the middle to lower income, the lower income, you could see their consumer confidence is dropping like a rock, while the other side is having like a party. And so there's no doubt that this is continuing to happen, and it's growing, this divergence between the rich and the poor, essentially. And I do think that that is a problem that our society has to deal with. Otherwise, it's going to blow up in everyone's face, right? I mean, you're going to see more and more discord out there, and things just kind of getting out of hand more and more. And we already see that a little in the political system and so forth, but it probably gets worse and worse as you see this divergence continue. So I think that's important to recognize. And then also just looking back at kind of where we could be next election at some point when we have the deficit now 33 trillion, the debt payments again. I think there's even in terms of refinancing the U.S. debt, I think in the next couple of years, there's $7.3 trillion that has to be refinanced. And that's going to be at interest rates of 5%, give or take. I mean, this is massive money now. Even at this point, we're spending as much on interest as we do on our military, which is, by the way, our military gets more money than like the next 5-10 countries combined. So, I mean, we're talking huge wastes in essentially dollars that could be going to help society that could be going to solve many other problems, just being thrown away because of our deficit being this high. And at some point, the only way out, unfortunately, is to print more money, right?
Mhm.
Which again is an unsustainable thing. Eventually, the population says, listen, here I am watching my dollars become worthless while the government is just doing this. And we didn't, as a society, vote for this, right? I mean, this isn't what we're voting for, is to have this happen. And I do think at a point it becomes unsustainable, and the government will have to say, okay, we need a scapegoat here. And unfortunately, the Fed, or fortunately, depending on your position on the Fed, will be that scapegoat. And from the ashes, you will have a new financial system that's born with strict rules that kind of cap the amount of spending to probably the amount of revenue that the government gets in, stuff like that. And I think that's the inevitable outcome. Now, again, is that 5 years away, 10 years away, 15? It's hard to know, but I do think that is the end game here. And ultimately, this is this thing. It's going to be horrendous for everyone to go through. But what rises from that, especially with crypto in the picture and the ability to kind of keep things in check, that is going to be a huge long-term, next 50, 100-year benefit for the United States.
I think it's inevitable. I do believe it is inevitable. And they asked, I believe it was Ernest Hemingway, how'd you go broke, Ernest? And his answer was, I think, what our answer will be. How did the dollar collapse? Little by little, and then all at once. And that's how Ernest Hemingway went broke. That's how the dollar will collapse. The little by little is you are seeing the de-dollarization around the globe. And even though the dollar is strong in its relation to the dollar index, that's because it's measured against a bunch of basket case currencies that are in worse shape than we are: Australia and Canada and the United Kingdom and Japan. And so from a standpoint of the dollar index, fine, it has a relative strength, but look at what it's buying here at home, and look at the prospect of it really doing anything, standing up against countries that are massively accumulating gold and coming together under an admitted new standard that will be pegged to commodities. I believe ultimately, inevitably, if you are fully invested in dollars, you're destined to go broke. And I don't know when that happens, little by little, then all at once. But what I do think is that when we accumulate things like cryptocurrencies and precious metals, I think if you approach it from at least even cryptocurrencies, okay? If you look at your cryptocurrencies from the standpoint of it being wealth, not getting wealthy from them, not looking at it as an investment, but as wealth, you, I think, will have a much easier time choosing which cryptocurrency to buy, understanding the role of precious metals, and not doing things for the wrong reason, not inverting your pyramid. What I mean by that is that when you look at things that are speculative, that are high yielding potential, make a lot of money, those should be at the very tip of your financial pyramid. And the base of your pyramid should be things that are stable, that are low growth, low risk, low yield. Now, when I think of silver as an example, I think you could argue that its potential performance puts it at the top of the pyramid. Yet it's been wealth for 5,000 plus years. I look at it as very conservative. This Silver Eagle that I'm holding, to me, it's not anything speculative. I can feel this, I can hold it, and I can give it to my daughter, who can give it to her daughter someday, who can give it to her daughter someday. And in the year 3000, when my grandkids are spending this, my great grandkids are spending this, God willing, long after the money in my wallet is hanging from a frame in the Smithsonian, this will still be immutable wealth. Now, I don't look at this as speculative, although the return potential for it is extraordinary. And anyway, so I just think that people need to look to alternative investments right now, because the dollar ultimately is going to collapse. When or how or what the trigger is, we don't know. I guess it remains to be seen how it all plays out. But yeah, if we get much more past 2023 without some really crazy things happening, I'll be completely shocked. And again, if you're not a contrarian at this point of the game, you're destined to be a victim. And if you are fully invested in dollars, you're destined to go broke. So this is the time. It's never been as important as it is. In my 33-year career, I've never been more concerned as a father of my young kids, the world they're growing up in, and what does a year or 2 or 3 from now look like? Why does Social Security Administration and the IRS load up on AR-15s and .223 ammunition if they don't expect some sort of insurrection? I don't know. It's I think, as the Chinese curse says, my friend, you live in interesting times, and I'll take dull and complacent, but these are indeed interesting and challenging. So, like I said, I'm excited to go through this with you guys and see how we get through the other end. I think living in Florida and seeing how fast grocery stores can empty during a hurricane, I think it's emblematic for everything. That when the hurricane comes, in some cases, we won't have much advanced warning. I would have cash on hand, small bills, 5s, 10s, 20s, as much as you can, a few $1,000s for sure, if you can. I'd have some gold and silver on hand. I'd have something to protect your family with on hand. I'd have food and water for a few months. And I'd be prepared. And I look at my medal this way. Look, I hope I never need to use this. And if I do, I'm damn glad I have it. It's not always just for an emergency. It could be an opportunity. There might be lots of opportunities when all this plays out. So, but if I don't, I'll give it to my kids, knowing that it has 5,000 years worth of historical precedent as being wealth. So what would my advice be? I'd get out of debt that is variable based, credit card debt. Do all you can to get out of debt in terms of anything that is variable. If you have a fixed rate mortgage of 3 or 4%, you're good. It's free money. But anything other than that, anything that is variable that will reset, you'd want to get out of. Already we're seeing credit card debt rise to 22, 23%. And, when you talk about the rule of 70 seconds, where you take the interest rate and divide it into 72, that means your credit card debt is doubling every 3 years if you just pay the minimum balance. Get out of debt as rates go higher, stockpile some gold, some silver, get some cryptocurrency, get some food, some water, get a gun, a baseball bat. If you don't like guns, get something to protect your family, because, as Gerald Celente puts it, when people lose everything, they lose it. Meaning, What do you got to lose if your kids are starving to death? Are you going to go break into someone's house or let your children starve to death right in front of you?